Hey, were you ever a MySpace person?
Yes, I did have an account.
So was I. I was kind of like all in. But now, of course, there is the king of all kings of social media, Facebook. But before we get into Facebook, I just wanted to kind of like give a quick shout out to MySpace, man. MySpace was like on the low teaching people how to code.
That's funny. I don't remember all the intricacies and the details of the coding, but I'm sure it probably did.
I remember my MySpace page. It had like a theme song. I had like flashing lights. I had like moving pictures of myself doing different things. I mean, like my MySpace page was off the chain. And then Facebook came around and it became kind of sterile. It was just blue and white and just a regular picture. But everybody loved it. Everybody left MySpace and somebody became a multi-billionaire off of that. Well, as a result of that, they made a movie called The Social Network. And that was our movie for the week that we're going to talk about dealing with entrepreneurship. Stay tuned.
This is Mikel-Claire.
And this is Trey.
And we are the couple of entrepreneurs. We're here to share with you our journey of successes and setbacks as we enter the world of entrepreneurship now that we no longer have 9-to-5s due to the new normal of the world and the pandemic.
Join us as we race the clock to start earning money, gain consistency, and overcome self-doubts and uncertainty as we search for our voices and obtain personal and financial growth.
Do you know anybody who's not on Facebook?
And my dad. That's about his... Yeah, I think... Yeah, my dad and our son. That's it.
So pretty much every single person that we know is on Facebook for some reason.
It is the most popular website of all time outside of Amazon.
So in the movie, The Social Network, of course, they're talking about the founders, Mark Zuckerberg and Eduardo Saverin and a couple of their other roommates that were the creators, right?
Right.
So what was it, do you think, that inspired them to create such a platform?
Well, according to the movie, it was to get attention. There was a bunch of geeks and nerds who didn't have the clout to get into some of the bigger name groups. So they kind of like leveled the playing field and made everybody their own group. It was actually kind of brilliant if you think about it. But then again, Edward Saverin, you kind of said it. Eduardo had a little bit of clout, so he was accepted into one of the main social groups. But poor Mark, man, geek through and through. He was just too eccentric. He was like, you know what? I'll make my own group.
So when you say group, you're talking about, because they went to Harvard, right?
Right.
So what kind of group? Is it like a socialist group or an elitist group? What kind of group are you talking about?
Their groups were a little bit different than your typical Greek fraternities. I think their groups are like rooted in like the Skull and Bones and secret society groups, like these old groups that are known to make you a president or become, the chief of staff or, one of those kind of groups. And it's super, super elite. Those Ivy League schools are some of the most sought after schools on the planet. And then if you can get into a subgroup within that school, that really makes you stand out. And as brilliant as Mark was, and he was absolutely brilliant, he was still a social pariah, an outcast. He only had one friend.
Based off the movie, you do think that was the main motivator for him?
I think for Mark's character, it was the main motivation for him. As we go through the story and learn how the company comes together, he had no interest in making money. It was all about popularity. It's brilliant as this young man was, he still had a child's mentality attached to it. All he wanted was to be accepted and to be loved by his peers. And that is what fueled him to build a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, are you seeing another angle that I'm not seeing?
I don't know if I think that he was looking for attention. I think he was like, he had this brilliant idea. And I think it was more about him cultivating the idea than necessarily the attention that he got from it, like creating something. My perception was a little different with that.
Huh. Well, maybe. I could kind of see that. But then why create a social network whose sole purpose is to show to friends and family and all of that? But then again, maybe. But he made multiple networks that are all social based. Even his very first project that he used to get revenge on his recently ex-girlfriend was a social experiment. It was just to rate girls, who's hot and who's not. And he ended up making a huge mistake and forcing himself into seclusion even more off of that. But it was still a social experiment in a sense. I just didn't feel that he was in it for the money in the beginning. The relationship with his best friend was strained because his best friend was about to be accepted into a group that he would never be accepted in. And he felt like a loner, I think.
I agree with that. I do think, he obviously was very jealous of that. I do believe that. I know his friend Eduardo mentioned it in the movie that may have been the motivator for him starting it. But for some reason, I just didn't see that as the sole motivation. And then he kind of took the idea from these twins that also attended Harvard, who had come to him to help them create the Harvard connection or some kind Harvard EDU or some kind of connection, something. Mm-hmm. And supposedly he took their idea and made it 10,000 times better, but he was actually able to create the idea versus just talk about it. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if I really feel like that was the motivation. But it's interesting, and I'm sure that everyone can come to their own conclusion, unless he's actually spoken about it somewhere other than the movie that we're just not aware of.
Well, I'm curious. Do you feel that Mark Zuckerberg is a thief? Did he steal the idea and profit off of it, or do you think he kind of gets a pass because he took an idea and just made it better? Like, where do you draw the line?
Well, they didn't actually go into too much detail with the twins explaining what their actual idea was. They gave like the gist. So I'm not sure if I think he stole the idea. He did take it and swirl it around a little bit and change it somewhat, I'm sure. But like he said, he's the only one that was able to actually create it. So I don't know. I don't think he stole it. Do you?
I do. I think he stole it. But then there's that old saying, and I'm definitely about to butcher this. What is it like good artists create, great artists steal. And that is people who have a knack of taking something that's already out there and then making it better. But if you I'm not a huge art major, but I do remember the few art classes that I did take that somebody would make the foundation for some type of art movement, and then people would jump on that movement and then like improve upon it. I'm not sure if those particular artists were considered thieves per se. Like I'm sure Picasso's paintings are based off the backs of some other artist who is obviously not anywhere near as known as he is, but without some type of foundation in order to start from, it's tough to just pull something out the ether.
As a cake artist, because I do create, custom cakes. So for me, if someone sends me something that's like a picture for inspiration, no matter how much I try to make it look very, very similar to what it is that they're asking for, there's no two artists that are going to create something the exact same way. There's going to be a color that's a little different, or there's going to be, for me, fondant that's shaped a little differently. Nothing is exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So to say that it's actually like stolen, I don't think is accurate in that sense.
Okay.
Because, and for Mark, like the coding is different. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things that are not the same. And you mentioned it's like the foundation of what something is versus like stealing it.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
That was Mark's whole argument, is that there's all of the code that was in Facebook was originally created, but the concept is technically stolen. And then that's where the courts come in for them to try to decide exactly who has intellectual rights to what. And that's a whole other thing. I got to give him credit for where credit's due. He said something that was really pivotal. If you invented Facebook, then you would have invented Facebook. You didn't. I did. So, what else needs to really be said?
Do you think, would you consider, and this is a very probably a ridiculous question, but would you consider Mark Zuckerberg a true entrepreneur?
Yeah, because I think entrepreneurs are creators first. They create things out the ether, out the space, and then they figure out a way to make money from it. I think. Well, then again, now that I put the word money in, that kind of changes it, because his initial motivation it wasn't money. It was just making something cool, and then he met somebody who happened to know how to make money off of something cool. But he's still an entrepreneur through and through, because it's still his idea. He's still bringing value to people, and he's able to profit off of it.
But you said that it wasn't his idea. So it wasn't his idea.
No, I mean, he stole the idea.
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm saying.
You can still steal somebody's idea and be an entrepreneur. It doesn't, just because you stole it doesn't mean that, you don't have an entrepreneurial spirit. And there's a whole bunch of people that steal stuff and make money off of it.
Okay. So I was just looking at, because when you said it, you said you have an idea and you monetize it pretty much, which he did eventually, but it wasn't his idea. And he didn't even want to monetize it.
No.
But I mean, it happened eventually anyway, but because of other people.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting how his relationship with one of the co-founders of Napster, I think his name is Sean Parker. They sat down and he had asked him, he was like, man, what was it that made you want to create the Match website? And he was pretty much saying that he recognized that he did it to kind of like get back at a girl, or to get the attention of a girl. And Sean pretty much said the same thing, that he was like, well, I wanted to meet this girl. I couldn't, because she was, I don't know, dating the football team or whatever it was. So he went out and tried to make something of himself. It was like a different type of inspiration to bring out your inner you, your inner hustle, your inner entrepreneur. Do you think that as an entrepreneur, you have to have something to kind of like kick you in the pants to go in that direction? Or are you just born that way?
I think it depends on the person. And I know we've always talked about that, because, everybody is different. Everybody's motivation is different for what they do, what drives them and moves them forward. For some people, and I know you've mentioned this is true for you in some ways, is that it's when your back's against the wall. There's a sense of urgency. So I think that plays a part for a lot of people. Sometimes it might be revenge for some people. You know what I mean? That whole, like, look at, I'm really about to say this name on a podcast, but look at like Khloe Kardashian and like the whole revenge body. She has a whole show that's about losing weight and all of this and looking great to get back at somebody, right, so to speak. So I think whatever your motivation is, it varies depending on who you are. Money drives a lot of people. Mm-hmm. It didn't in this case for Mark, which is interesting. So it just depends on who the person is.
Okay.
But I mean, do you see it differently? Do you think that, that there's only like one motivator for a true entrepreneur, or are there like several?
Well, I think emotion is the motivator. Whatever that emotion is, for some it's fear of being broke, fear of being destitute, fear of being shunned. All of that stuff can push you to become more than you are. Some it's happiness. Doing something that you love is what continues to drive you to do something that you love. In the case of Khloe Kardashian's experiment with revenge bodies, jealousy is a form of hate. It's in that family. That can be used to inspire. Hate itself is an emotion. A lot of people don't want to give hate credit, but it can motivate. And on the other side of that, is joy and love. So I think all of those emotions are what gets people up in the morning to keep going. I don't think just logically thinking something out all the way through is going to keep you doing something for the rest of your life. I think it's something that you can do for the meantime. But unless you have some type of emotional investment, I think it's going to be difficult to be an entrepreneur. Do you feel that you can kind of have an emotional disconnect from what it is that you're doing and still be a successful long-term entrepreneur?
I think that it's possible, because I think about people that maybe don't have a particular interest in whatever it is that they're marketing or selling or talking about. I think that they may not have the same passion, so they may not sell or be as successful necessarily, but I think it's possible for them to. They may have that business gene or whatever it is, that they thrive in business or they thrive in sales versus someone who may be extremely passionate and they're able to connect with people. So I think it might be a different approach, but I think it's completely capable for either of those to occur and be successful.
Okay.
Do I think that emotion probably would do better? I think it depends on the market and what you're selling.
Okay. There was something that you had kind of like nudged me while we were watching, and we paused the video for like a hot second. And you were talking about the nature of having a business partner. And there's a couple of moments within the movie where, you know, you get to see the dichotomy between Mark and Eduardo. And you see the friendship in the beginning, and sprinkled throughout the movie, you see them at the litigation table or the table with the lawyers, and they're like at each other's throats, but yet there's still like hints of maybe feigned respect. And then you see the explosion at the end of what caused the break and the betrayal and all of that. So I guess what I'm asking is the complexities of having a business partner. Like, how do you feel about that? I feel like there's always the inevitable of butting heads and having different ideas and maybe wanting to go different directions. How do you navigate that? And if somebody as large as Mark Zuckerberg is having problems in the very beginning, you know, what chance do we stand just starting?
Well, there's a saying, I know you like to quote some things, so I'm going to quote something here. Okay. There's a saying that people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So I think that holds true probably for like business relationships as well, because it can span across all relationships. So if someone comes into your life for a reason, so say Eduardo came into Mark's life for the initial startup of the idea, for the initial investment financially in the idea, you know, for him to have a friend, somebody to talk to initially. And then for the season, I mean, it started off as the season of Facebook. They were initially getting along pretty well. They had some similar ideas in it and were supporting each other in it. But it didn't make it to a lifetime because they did have very different ideas of what direction to take the company in. And, you know, I think it's difficult not to be a little bit selfish when you have ideas. And so sometimes that can create tension with any relationship, but also especially in business relationships, if you're just very strong about whatever your opinion is and what direction something should go in. Or in that case, if you get, you know, what is the word? I don't want to say anything inappropriate, but I mean, he really screwed, can I say that? He really screwed Eduardo over. So,
oh yeah.
I mean, it sucks and it stinks, but I don't think not all relationships, period, but not all business relationships are meant to last. So it comes with what it says, relationships, right. And you have to either work on them or you have to go separate ways.
Right.
So,
yeah, it spoke to me about the value of compatibility. I think in the beginning stages of the relationship between Mark and Eduardo, they were very much yin and yang to each other. Eduardo had the business side of getting things together, and Mark kind of did the coding and, you know, the like boots on the ground kind of work regarding getting the project up and running. But then when things got moving and Mark was moving at a pace a little bit faster than what Eduardo could keep up with, you know, here pops up Sean, who is more like Mark than Eduardo. And I don't know if it was necessarily yin and yang, you know, it was yin and yin and yang and yang, you know, or however, if that makes sense. I don't know if they 100% complemented each other and facilitated each other's weaknesses with strengths and strengths with weaknesses. What I found on the web is that Sean ends up becoming, you know, one of Facebook's first presidents. So I guess the relationship worked out enough for him to run the company as the president. But as you grow and change as a human being, you know, your business is going to grow and change as well. And the relationships that you have in the beginning of that business could change later on down the road. And it's just interesting to see that actually, you know, kind of touched upon, and it just makes you well, it makes me curious about the path down the road and how everything is going to unfold, because you just don't know. You can't really foresee what the future holds. But one thing is for certain is change is guaranteed.
So in partnership, like if you're looking for a business partner, do you think that you should mix like friendships with business, or is it better to create a business relationship outside of your friendship circle?
I don't see why you can't have both. I don't think there's any one rule to business regarding partnerships. It's just, can you get along and can you move forward together? There's some people that, like, some family members can't work together. And then there's family businesses. Like, let's take Sam Walton, the man who created Walmart. I mean, it was a completely family-run business for a very long time. I mean, it's corporate now, but it was family-run and successful. Look at the Kardashians. They may not each be running the other person's businesses, but they're still a business unit as a family and bounce ideas, I'm sure, off of each other, connections, resources, all kinds of stuff. And I'm sure they go out of their way to make sure all of the sisters are lifted up. So I don't think there is like this cardinal rule that if you're really close to somebody that you can't start a business with them. It just depends on what do you bring to the table that can make this move forward.
So if something goes south, how do you salvage the friendship and still dissolve the business partnership?
A business breakup, I don't know. It may not be able to be salvageable depending on how much of an investment each person put in, because it's like a divorce. You're taking part of the business, another person's taking another part of the business, and what's left is like seeing the kids on weekends. I'm sure there's going to be like some problems with it. The person that comes into mind where it's the opposite of that is Jeff Bezos and his wife. Apparently him and his wife were allegedly really good friends. Before the business started, they got married, and then they realized that they just weren't good together married, and they split, and she took a sizable chunk of Amazon, but yet they still work amicably together. So there's that example. I don't think it's anything set in stone. I just think it just depends on how mature you are to be able to keep moving forward. And not everybody's mature enough to do that, or even needs to be mature enough to do that. Sometimes you just need to go your separate way and keep it moving.
As far as like Sean Parker was concerned, like I kind of saw him as an opportunist, I'm gonna be real. But part of entrepreneurship is being able to see an opportunity and to act. So I don't know, part of him seemed like a real jerk. And then the other part of him seemed like an opportunist who was just looking out for himself. So what was your take on him?
I think he was completely a jerk, absolutely an opportunist. But the thing is that he got results. No matter how you felt about him, when that moment came, when Eduardo was going around New York hustling door to door trying to get some venture capital, and then Sean shows up with $500,000 check, regardless how you feel, money talks. So if he is a jerk, or maybe he's not easy to get along with, at the end of the day, he had the check ready. He had the meeting ready. He had the company ready. And Eduardo just was out of his league. Who would you like more? I mean, based off of what we saw on the movie, I mean, Eduardo seemed like he would absolutely be the nicer person to hang out with and be buddy and chummy with. And he was. That was Mark's homeboy, his only best friend. But when it came to ramping it up to a whole other level, you got to go with experience. And that's what Sean brought, was experience, and he backed it up with results.
Well, so overall, because we always, try to talk about, like, overall, did you like the movie? Did you feel like you got anything from it as far as like an entrepreneurial aspect?
I got a lot out of it, especially when it comes to understanding passion for what you do. You have to keep in mind that Mark was renowned and became famous off of a project that he did based off of dumping his girlfriend on a drunken rant. I mean, that's just, he did it, and it and it became a natural thing, like a duck swimming in a lake. You know, that's just what he does. He coded something, he made it awesome, and then he became like famous off of it. And then like with 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, jumped into another project because that's just what he does. He's a coder. He can find the angles and make something worthy of your attention. And he became a billionaire off of that. You know, I don't think that he could necessarily do that with something that he didn't have the passion for. So to me, it just shows a sizable importance of kind of like enjoying what you do in order to make the success a little bit easier to digest. Was there any kind of like big takeaways that you had from the movie?
Sean Parker, he was an interesting character for me. I know the movie was about Mark and Eduardo and their story, but the way that Sean was able to see, like I said, see the opportunity, like he had never even heard of Facebook before, and he was at young lady's house partaking in extracurricular activities and looked on her computer to check his email, and he saw that the Facebook at the time, that Facebook was up on her computer, and was like, oh, what is this? So in those brief seconds that he looked at it, and she mentioned that it was like all over at several different campuses and what it was, he was able to see, hey, I need to speak to the person who is the founder of this, because this is an opportunity, and I'm going to take this opportunity and turn it into my opportunity and run with it. So I think that spoke out to me, just being able to see different angles and see what is a true opportunity and creating an opportunity when there isn't one. So that's what really spoke to me.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. I see a great opportunity right now, and that opportunity is to stick a pin in this bad boy. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Couple of Entrepreneurs. Do us a favor and yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button. Tell your friends and family that we are out here talking money, entrepreneurship, social networks, Facebook, all that good stuff.
Make sure you get on Facebook and share The Couple of Entrepreneurs with your friends.
Definitely all that amazing good stuff. Well, we will catch you on the next one. Peace out.